Types of interviews. Structured and semi-structured interviews are verbal questionnaires. They consist in a set of questions designed to elicit specific answers from respondents. Often they are used to obtain information that can later be compared and contrasted. Now, let's talk about informal interviews. They are much less formal than structured or semi-structured interviews. They seem like casual conversations, pursuing the interests of both researcher and the respondent in turn. They are the most common type of interview in qualitative research. Let's see the last type of interview. Retrospective interview can be structured, semi-structured, or informal. A researcher who wants to conduct a retrospective interview tries to get a response to recall and then reconstruct from memory something that has happened in the past. A retrospective interview is the least likely of the four interview types to provide accurate, reliable data from the research. Let me tell you that there are some interviewing strategies used in educational research. The types of interviews are informal conversational interview, interview guide approach, standardized open-ended interviews, and closed fixed response interviews. These four types of interviews have some different characteristics, strengths, and weaknesses. Now, let's learn about what key actor interviews means. Some people in any group are more informed about the culture and history of their group than others, as well as more articulated. Such individuals traditionally are called key informants, are especially useful for resources of information. But once Federman creates a new term, they are called key actors to avoid the stigma attached to the term informant, as well as the historical roots that underline this term. Key actors are especially individual and the ones that have an excellent resource of information. Now, let's learn the different types of interview questions. There are 6 basic types of questions that can be asked of people. Any of these are questions may be asked during an interview. Let's see the first one. Background or demographic questions are routine sorts of questions about the background characteristics of the respondents. They include questions about education, previous occupation, age, income, and the like. These are the most common ones. Now, let's say an example.
Hello, my name is Tamale Leli. I'm from El Salvador. I'm a student from University of El Salvador, and I am 22 years old. In my free times, I like to listen to music, and I also like playing soccer, and sometimes I like to read some books.
This was an example of background or demographic questions. As you could see, the questions include education, age, and the like. As I told you, these are the most common questions to be asked. Now, let's see the second one. Knowledge questions. They are as a contrast with opinions, beliefs, and attitudes. Knowledge questions are about school, for example, may concern the kind of courses available to students, graduation requirements, the sort of extracurricular activities provided, school rules, enrollment policies, and the like. As you can remember, we have already seen those kind of knowledge questions every time we had answered some questions for those people who are doing their final graduation work here at the University of El Salvador. Third, experience or behavior questions focus on what a respondent is currently doing or has done in the past. Their intent is to elicit a description of experience, behaviors, or activities that could have been observed, but for a reason such as the reservant not being present, were not. Example may include a question like, If I had been in your class during the past semester, what kinds of things would I have been doing? Fourth, opinion or values questions are aimed at finding what people think about some topics or issues. These kind of questions call attention to the respondent's goals, beliefs, attitudes, or values. For example, let's say you are a researcher and you have to ask to other students of different schools at the university what do they think about the fact that the new principal and this principal of this university are from the foreign language department. 5. Feeling questions. Consider how respondents feel about things. They are directed toward people emotional responses to their experiences. For example, let's say I'm going to ask the teacher of this class, "Teacher, how do you feel about the way students behave in this class?" I hope the answer is to be proud of us. 6. This is the last type of interview question, and it is called sensory question. Focus on what a respondent has seen, heard, tasted, smelled, or touched. Examples may include questions such as, when you enter to your classroom, what do you see? Or, how would you describe what your class sounds like? Interviewing behavior. A set of expectations exists for all interviews. Here are some of the most important. First, respect the culture of the group being studied. It would be insensitive, for example, if a researcher to wear expensive clothing while conducting an interview with impoverished inner-city high school youth. A constant disregard for a group's traditions and values, however, is bound to impede the researcher's effort to obtain reliable and valid information. Second, respect the individual being interviewed. Those who agree to be interviewed give up time they may spend elsewhere to answer the researcher's questions. An interview, therefore, should not be viewed as an opportunity to criticize or evaluate the interviewee's action or ideas. Rather, it's an opportunity to learn from the interviewee. Always remember that in a classroom, a teacher, a student, a counselor, or a school custodian all have work to do, and hence, every researcher is well reminded not to waste their time. Interviews should start and end at the scheduled time and be conducted courteously. Further, the researcher should pick up on clues given by the interviewee. As Federmans points out, repeated glances at the watch are usually clear signal that the time is up. Instead of leading questions, interviewers often ask open-ended questions. Open-ended questions indicate an area to be explored without suggesting to the participant how it should be explored. They do not presume an answer. So, this is very important. Also, do not ask dichotomous questions. That is, questions that permit a yes-no answer when you are trying to get a complete picture. The problem with dichotomous questions is that they do not encourage the respondent to talk. Often, when an interview is having troubles getting a participant to talk, it is because he or she is asking these type of questions. Here is an example of a conversation between a teenager and his parents. The teen has just returned home from a date, and it says, "Do you know that you are late?" And the teen says, "Oh yeah." "Did you have a good time?" "Yeah." "Did you go to a movie?" Yeah." "Was a good movie?" Yeah, it was a good movie." "So, it was worth seeing it?" Yeah, it was worth seeing it." "I have heard a lot about it. Do you think I would like it?" I don't think so, or maybe, I don't know. Anything else you would like to tell me about the evening?" "No, I guess not, that's it." The teenager goes upstairs to bed, and one parent says to another, "It's sure it's very hard to get him to talk with us." As you can see, the problem with asking these autonomous questions is that they can easily turn an interview into something more like a test or even an interrogation, and you don't want that, right? So, ask only one question at a time. That's another advice. Remember that asking only a single question and allowing the participant to respond is something that we as a researcher must take into account. Let's see the next figure. The first thing I would like to ask you is, how did you find out about our project? I mean, who did you talk to about it, or did you, or why not, and what was said? What did you then? Huh? Oh, poor Mr. Adams. He just can't seem to ask a simple question. So, as you could see in the example, it is important to don't ask more than one question at a time. Don't interrupt. This is perhaps the most important feature of a good interviewing. Don't interrupt participants when they are talking. And this is especially true when the participant says something that the interviewer finds particularly interesting. Often, it is tempting to interrupt the speaker to pursue this interesting item, but to do so may interrupt the participant's train of thought. It is better to simplify this by taking some notes, and then when there is a pause in the conversation, you can surely ask your doubts. Focus group interviews. The interviewer asks a small group of people, usually 4 or 8, to think about a series of questions. The participants are seated together in a group and get to hear one to another responses to their questions. Often, they offer additional comments beyond what the original had to say once they heard their responses. Recording interview data. No matter what kind of interview one conducts, and no matter how carefully one prepares the interview questions, all will be not easy if the interviewer doesn't capture what the interview actually says. While the interview is going on, therefore, it is essential to record as faithful as possible what the participant has to say. So, a type recorder, therefore, is often considered an indispensable part of an qualitative research equipment. But using a type recorder doesn't eliminate the need to take notes. Ethics in interviewing. The necessity for informed consent. In deep interviews, ask participants to reveal much about their lives. During such interviews, a measure of intimacy can develop between interviewers and participants. That can lead participants to share information about events in their lives that could leave them very vulnerable. Participants deserve to be protected from such vulnerability. Furthermore, interviewers also need to be protected against any misunderstanding on the part of participants as the nature and purpose of the interview itself. This is all, folks. Now is your time to put this knowledge into practice. You can do it! Practicing is the key to success. Thank you very much for your attention. Now my classmate is going to continue.